What is up, guys, and welcome to another special episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, from what everyone is viewing here, we are decked in the Albiroja because it is finally the international break again. We are back. World Cup qualifiers are back. Things have gone so quickly from the last one. But anyway, we are back with three big important games for the Albiroja as they look to book their place into Qatar 2022, which will start in about 13 months from now. Time flies. God, time flies, man. But obviously, we'll dissect into what Paraguay's chances are for these three games, talk about some players that we would like to see in these games, obviously, what this means for Eduardo Berizzo in his future as the national team manager. We'll get it all right here on this fantastic preview. Let's go straight to the motherland, which is kind of feeling a bit divided, you would say, 48 hours from the big game against Argentina. You know, people have really been going at all for these games. I've heard that it's now actually sold out for the amount of capacity that the game is there, but I think it's not just to watch Paraguay, Fed. I think it's to watch the little magician from Argentina. But in any case, how are you, Fede, and how are you feeling for these three games that are ultimately very important for the Argentin's chances to qualify for Qatar?
Well, it's definitely not to chat on our coach. I mean, not a lot of people are by his side right now. Hey, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi to everybody in Guarani Vision. Yeah, I think a lot of people are actually wanting to go to this game because you got the Messi effect. You got Messi and his gang in town, and they are also the champions of the Copa America. So this is a very good team to actually see. You know, if you actually like football, you like watching big games, you like watching good players. I mean, Argentina, Brazil, these are the matches that you actually want to go to the stadium. These are the hot tickets in town when these teams come. So yeah, a lot of people are going to be there. Thankfully, we're going to have more people in the stands this time. Last time around, I think it was around 20 to 30% of the capacity. Now it's up to 50% of the stadium capacity. So yeah, a lot more people are going to be in Defensores del Chaco, where I was just a couple of days. And if you haven't seen that episode, please go and do so. And on our YouTube channel, I'm starting to like this YouTuber deal, or this job, just going around with the camera, even though people obviously look at you weird. I'm actually kind of used to this because I usually have a camera going around with me as I am a journalist. But yeah, this kind of a blogger thing, it's kind of different, and people don't do that much here, especially on football stadiums. So yeah, a lot of people were like, what is this guy doing? Why is he filming? There was not that many people around. So the idea was to show you guys the stadiums, and we're going to do more and more of these videos as we go on. But yeah, we're going to talk here about what's coming up. Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, our heads are on these three teams. We got to beat some of them at least, Roberto.
Some of them at least. We need to get these big points. And then heading into Ralph here, I mean, yeah, it kind of feels as if though it's do or die, but we always said that for Paraguay in all of these games. But ultimately, looking at these games, three opponents that obviously have a ton of history against Paraguay, one of the hardest, you would say, games that you would have for Paraguay in these World Cup qualifiers. So ultimately, they need to get the results fast, like Fede said. Even though they got the win against Venezuela last month, there are still people that are not convinced by this squad, by Eduardo Berizzo, by a lot of things. So what a way to go into this game, and obviously the two games afterwards, hopefully trying to feel a bit more confident for this Paraguay side.
We're getting into crunch time. Like you say, only a year to go, more or less, until the World Cup, and three more games. So by the end of these three, we're really in that, crunch time. And I think by the end of these three games, Paraguay has to be in the right position, as in the playoff spot or even higher, but I doubt that, but at least in the playoff spot. So it's in their hands, right? And it's a very hard task. Those games we're talking about, Argentina, Copa America champions coming to Defensores. Chile is arguably the easiest game of the three, if we just think of it, because they have a really good record in Santiago recently. And then Bolivia is in La Paz is a team that we've seen teams go there and get points in La Paz recently, but Paraguay is a team that historically used to get points in La Paz and more recently has done nothing in the last 20 years or so. So you're trying to see, like, from these 3 games, where can we pull the points from, and can we get 4 points, 5 points? It's hard to look at it. We're going to go into it in detail, but yeah, it's a really big challenge, and they're coming in with some confidence. Like we spoke in our last episode, we were talking about the squad, and there's, you know, some key players are coming back, but then you see some of the same weaknesses of the side, and, you know, what are they going to do with the ball, or how are they going to have more possession, how are they going to defend against Di Maria and Messi. You know, there's a lot of question marks as well. So it's a tough time coming up. I'm really pleased there is 50% capacity though in the stadium, because that's something that can help Paraguay in this first game, which is their only home match of the 3. So, you know, it really needs to get off on the right foot on Thursday night against Argentina. I think that's the big hope and the big challenge.
And what a way to do it against your classic rival. So let's go into it. Of course, Paraguay against Argentina at the Defensores del Chaco on Thursday for the first time in 6 years. The last time that these two faced each other at the Defensores was a 0-0 draw under, obviously, a manager that had coached Paraguay before and was coaching Argentina at the time, Tata Martino. Looking at the record as a whole, Paraguay has had a reasonable record, you would say, against a team that obviously has a lot of history in Argentina. 2 wins, 3 losses, and 4 draws. Looking at this team overall, and we're going to go to Fede on this one. We saw Eduardo Berizzo speak in his press conference today. You know, ultimately, kind of feeling a bit confident, also a bit pressured, you would say. It was actually the first time that journalists were actually at Ipanema at the press conference, so they were able to confront him face to face. And, you know, I think looking into some of the lineups that we're starting to see, you know, obviously, I think, you know, at the time of recording, we're probably going to get even a better squad for tomorrow. But looking at it real quick, we do see some of the usual names. We see, obviously, the defense in the likes of Gomez, Alonso, Alderete, obviously Anthony Silva in goal, Roberto Rojas possibly playing. Looking at the midfield, you have the likes of Morel and Villasanti, 2 players who have flourished at the Albiroja for the last few games, the Romero twins. And with the return of Miguel Almiron, someone who was missed last month because of restrictions not being able to travel to Paraguay, the big doubt, of course, will be who will be at striker. We see Tony Sanabria being appeared on, but you still have the likes of Charlie Gonzalez appearing. You have also Tacuara Cardoso in the squad as well. So, Fede, I just want your take, at least now heading into this game, what Berizzo needs to do to get the result against Argentina, and, you know, where do you see them trying to get that result? What needs to be done to get it?
Well, first of all, you're going to have to stop Messi, right? I mean, this is probably one of the best players out there in the world, and he's going to take over eventually in the game. But this is not the only thing that you're going to have to stop from this Argentinian team, talking about everything that they've had. I mean, I was just thinking while you were talking, the last time we saw them in Copa America, it was Papu Gomez who actually surprised us. So I don't know. I mean, Scaloni has this 11. He has this starting team. I think he's going to come with his best team. The one that beat the one that Copa America against Brazil, the team that's been playing lately in the qualifiers, also this team that just comes out of memory. But, you know, he might throw a surprise at you. We've actually faced Argentina a lot lately. It's been kind of become frequently, and I think this is an advantage and a disadvantage. Sometimes it's good for the managers, sometimes it's bad for them, and it's the 4th time against Scaloni. So for Berizzo, I mean, he's got to learn about these battles, these strategy battles, and I'm always talking about that in the South American qualifiers, just because I think we have really good coaches here in South America, and Scaloni has proven that. I mean, Scaloni has not just put together a good team, a team full of stars, but he's actually brought in new players. He's given them confidence. And now you know what Argentina is going to do. I mean, they're at their best moment right now. So you really got to think about what you're going up against. And Berizzo usually does this when we go up against the big teams, right? So I think there is going to be a lot of strategy behind it, thinking a lot more on what you have in front of you than actually trying to go out and win this game. That's why when you were talking about the strikers there, I actually have my doubts that we're going to see Carlos Gonzalez, Tony Sanabria, these center forwards, at least from the get-go, from the first minute of the game. I think we're going to see Miggy and Angel Romero maybe just up there, and we're going to see a line of 5 defenders with Robert Rojas, Gomez, Junior Alonso, Omar Alderete taking over on that left side where David Martinez was just looking great, fabulous. The left back from River Plate, unfortunately, he's injured. He's out on this game. Also, our right back is injured still. We don't have our traditional players on those spots, so we got to improvise. And improvising means Roberto Rojas, maybe Juan Escobar, who is back on this roster, might get a chance. But I think Juan Escobar is good. We might see him against Chile. We might see him play against Bolivia in the altitude, and Roberto Rojas Roberto has played really well. Robert Rojas, right? And Omar Alderete also, he's taken over and he's just playing awesome in Spain ever since he went there. And in the midfield, Jorge Morel, he's been there these last couple of games. I mean, maybe he is finally the heart of the team that we've needed. That classic defender midfielder. Somebody was telling me today, he's our new Topo Cáceres. I don't know if people remember back in the day who Topo Cáceres was. He's just this dog, just unleashed in the midfield that just gets the ball back. And Jorge Morel has a lot of that. He gets the ball back. That's his obsession, and he's really good at that. So he kind of gives us that balance, what you don't get with Villasante, with Lucena. They are more offensive kind of midfielders. So with Arzamendia, which we tried him there on the left side in midfield, and this leaves the chance to play Miggy up front, to play Miggy closer to the box. And I think he's going to try this now because we've seen that Arzamendia has kind of worked well there on the midfield and not so much as the left back. He has problems defending. I've seen some of the games now in Cádiz, his new team in Spain, and he's kind of been overpassed also there, playing as a left back. So maybe his spot is more midfield and having somebody back there. This time it's going to be Alderete. Lately it was David Martinez, which I think was a great acquisition to this team. But we got some players that are out, unfortunately, for these games.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting time for Berizzo to kind of decide what to do, because the way Fede is explaining how he thinks Berizzo will set up is exactly what he did pretty much in the World Cup qualifier in Buenos Aires, right? But if we go to the Copa America, he put actually quite an attacking team against Argentina. We lost that game 1-0. It was Papu Gomez who scored very early on. And we dominated possession. I think we had about 60% possession. We played this kind of 4-2-3-1, and the 3 was like Almiron, Angel Romero, Kaku. Kaku, by the way, for me has been one of the best players behind Angel Romero so far in the last combo, because Almiron wasn't there, of course. So there might have been a thought that maybe he used that Copa America game knowing that he has this match in the schedule, and it was to try out, would this work against Argentina? Would we be totally overrun? I think his nature, and as we've seen, and as Fede is mentioning, is he goes more cautious. When he's not sure, he'll go more cautious. And having lost that game to Argentina in the Copa America, they weren't playing their best team for sure. Messi was playing, I think, Di Maria, Agüero, I remember, but it wasn't like their number one team that they're going to bring to Asunción on Thursday. So knowing that, I think he will err on the side of caution. He was talking today about Arzamendia. He named him as one of the possible left backs. He said it would be Arzamendia Alderete in the press conference. So I think it's maybe a hint that they could both play, as Fede says. And I think the midfield is where it's very interesting. Morel gives you that, he is that kind of holding midfielder, that anchor. But then if we're going to try and stop people like De Paul and Lo Celso, we need to pressure them. And how are we going to pressure them? It has to be a Villasante, maybe a Hugo Martinez, probably not a Richard Sanchez. I would say probably not a Lucena. I mean, I really like Lucena when he partners with Villasante, because we saw how successful that's been previously. But I don't know if you would want him in this game if you're going to have Morel and Villasante already have a Lucena as well. Maybe you want a Hugo Martinez that can be really pressuring, because I think that midfield battle is going to be key. We don't want Argentina to be able to control that, to be able to switch play quickly, because if they can switch play from side to side, which is something De Paul does really well, then people like Asamendi are going to struggle too much, or whoever plays at right back is going to have a tough game. So I'm really interested by that kind of midfield that we're going to use. And I think Morel really is the key there. He's like that anchor that we're going to need, and then have two kind of pressers, I suppose, in the middle that can really try and put some pressure on Argentina when they have the ball.
Certainly will be an important matchup, I think, for a lot of these players. Typically you would see Paraguay always play well against them. Obviously against Argentina, it's always a tough game, especially under Berizzo. I think a lot of these players understand that they're here to really get something, and I think a result like this, if they're able to get it, would ultimately get the confidence heading into the next game against Chile in Santiago, which we'll now switch to, because this is a game that, I think people can feel optimistic about, regardless of what happens in Asunción on Thursday. Looking into this game against Chile, historically speaking, it's actually one of the positive records. Looking at 9 games that Paraguay played against Chile over there in Santiago, 4 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. We are actually looking at a Paraguay squad that haven't lost to Chile in 4 games, and this is coming from Copa Americas, from obviously World Cup qualifiers for Russia 2018. So, Ralph, going into this one, and you look at a Chile side that obviously hasn't been its strongest in quite some time. Under the manager Martin Lasarte, it's looked very much in a way dull. They haven't won a game in the World Cup qualifier since November against Peru. They lost against Colombia. They drew against Ecuador, and they lost to Brazil as well. So, I think Paraguay are really looking into this really with the golden opportunity to get a result. And, looking at history as it's been against them, you would have to say that this is the one that you would have to feel as confident in getting results.
Definitely. As I mentioned earlier, I think this of the 3 games, this is the easiest. I mean, it's not an easy game, but it's the easiest of the 3. If you look at Chile, had an awful combo the last 3 games, as you've just mentioned, and that's where Paraguay opened up that gap. So going into the first game of this combo, Paraguay are 4 points clear of Chile. So the huge pressure, and Chile are going to Peru, by the way, to play, which is always a classical for them. Is, Peru are on the up, I would say, whereas Chile are in this difficult stage. So you feel that we're going to come to the game in Santiago with Chile in more need of the points than Paraguay because of the current position they're in. They're the home team as well. It puts a lot of pressure on them. And this really plays into Paraguay's hands, because if we're honest, Paraguay play better without the ball, and they play better when a team is trying to attack against them, and is a team with, I would say, an aging team, a team that's not particularly fast. If you look at the Chilean team, is alongside with Uruguay's team, they're the oldest average ages, I would assume, in these qualifiers. And that's where you think someone like Almiron can do a lot of damage, Angel Romero as well. Could it be a game to try out Julio Enciso? That could be quite exciting. Julio Enciso, for listeners to remember, is, the teenage sensation at Libertad. He played in the Copa America, made his debut. He was in the squad last time round. He's also here. He had a really good game at the weekend against Cerro Porteño. It was Libertad Cerro. Libertad lost that game, but he was very good. He was all over the place, running at players, frightening players. For sure, sometimes his final ball isn't perfect, but he could be an interesting player just to put in the mix and really start terrorizing whoever's going to play at right back in Santiago. So this is a game I think Paraguay should feel confident for, should be going for the 3 points with that kind of defensive system, but knowing that they're good enough in transition to really do some damage.
This is the team to beat. This is the team we need to win. This is the game for us in these 3 games. I mean, we're going to talk about Bolivia in just a bit, but I mean, if you beat Argentina, it's an upset. I mean, it's a surprise. Everybody's going to be shocked, and everybody's going to be applauding. Obviously, you're going to catch people's attention if you beat Argentina. but you got to beat Chile because lately you won against Chile. You beat them. And it was probably their Berizzo's best game, I would even say. That 2-0 against Chile in the last Copa America. I mean, that was probably one of the games that I've loved the most out of this national team up until now. I mean, we looked so good that game. And I was just looking while Ralph was talking about the lineup from that game. And most of the players from that lineup, I mean, you could have them available for this game against Chile. Chile has a lot of problems. I was reading about their injury list, and they have a lot of players out for this first game against Peru. We'll see how many they get back for the second game against us. Arturo Abidal is going to be rested because he's not going to play the first game. And I think he does feel like he has a depth against Paraguay just because of the way that we beat them also in Copa America. I do think they are kind of hurt because of that situation. And it is going to be kind of special for them because of everything that Ralph said. And it could be one of their last chances to get on this train. But it is our chance to knock down also an opponent. And that's what we need to do against them in Santiago. This is our match. That's the game we have to go at. And that's where I hope that's the game I actually hope that Berizzo was the most offensive team. And I actually think that some players are going to rest for this first game against Argentina, and they're going to wait for that second game to be fresh, like Carlos Gonzalez, like Brian Zamudio, players that are going to be hungry for the action. And I think they're going to be key, and they're going to be very important against Chile. Maybe other players also. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see how we do against Argentina, but I do think he's going to mix it up. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see the same team against Argentina, and then we're going to see the same starting team against Chile. I think that he's going to mix it up because they're going to be very demanding games against Argentina, and obviously against Chile, and even more in the altitude against Bolivia, Roberto.
One would assume that if they're able to get a result over there in Asunción against Argentina, even a draw, you would think that it would be positive, but this also ties into if they get the win in Santiago de Chile, not just they draw in both the games, but they have to get the win over there in Chile. So I think that's the crucial part of this. But ultimately, I do agree. I think we will see a different squad against Chile. Ultimately, we might see some players that generally have not had a lot of minutes on the ready, so perhaps getting a test. But ultimately, it would need to be a big result against Argentina to go into this one. That really is the must win of the three games. And heading into the last one, which is probably the hardest game that you could play in South America, outside of obviously playing in Brazil. But it is against Bolivia in the altitude of La Paz. Fede, I mean, this is something that teams have been able to get results. Some teams have been able to get wins. Some people haven't even get a point. What would Paraguay need to do for this one? Because obviously, the third game is always the one that is usually determines really what's going to go on in the World Cup qualifiers. We would have been at least 12 games in after this with 6 more to go. I mean, you would think that any point that Paraguay can take in La Paz would be excellent. But looking at Bolivia as a whole, I mean, they do have actually the top goal scorer of the qualifier so far with Marcelo Moreno Martins. But how do you think this Paraguay side can really go in and try to get the win? I mean, it is the altitude. A lot of these players don't have that kind of I wouldn't say energy, but they're not accustomed to these conditions. So I'm just curious of what they need to do to get the results here.
Yeah, but we actually have a lot of players that play in Mexico. We have a lot of players that actually play in altitude also. So they have some sort of experience, and Berizzo talked about this also on the press conference, and he thinks that that's actually a key factor for picking the players against Bolivia also. So I do think that players that play in Mexico, like Brian Zamudio, Carlos Gonzalez, in defense, Juan Escobar, in midfield, you have a couple there also. Richard Sanchez might get a chance there. So I do think that some players that have altitude experience could make the difference in the starting 11, but it all depends on how the match goes. I mean, sometimes it's very important in the altitude to score first early in the match. Sometimes it's really hard to score because it's really hard to shoot at at target also. Most players get tempted to shoot from very far away. It's really hard to have the ball. It's really hard to handle the ball up there also. So it's really not easy to play up there. And sometimes you have these long games where sometimes you need players on those last minutes. You need players coming in fresh and maybe trying to win it in those last minutes, because it is expected for you to win against Bolivia. This is the weakest team in South America. So eventually you're going to take it to them. You can do it from the beginning of the game, or you can do it waiting a little bit more and seeing if you have players for that long game. I think it's going to be a strategy game also from Berizzo, because of the choice that he needs to make on the players, and just to see what kind of players we actually have available for that last game. Because I was looking at the stats, and we have a lot of players that need to really be careful in these games because of the yellow cards. Matias Villasanti, Angel Lucena, Gaston Jimenez, Junior Alonso, Fabian Balbuena, and Angel Romero. If any of these players in one of these three games, if they see a yellow card, we will have them out for the next game. So it's something to also have on our minds, just in case we miss one of these players. We're gonna have to mix it around. We're gonna need probably most of the roster on these three games, Rob.
I agree. I think we will be seeing definitely different teams, or at least different strategies between Argentina and Chile. And then Bolivia, I agree that it could be a totally different team. To Fede's point, some of those players like Richard Sanchez, I don't see him having a role against Argentina, maybe against Chile, but it's perfect then for him to be used in La Paz. It's interesting that Bolivia are not doing particularly well at home. They've only won one of the 4 qualifiers so far, and that was against Venezuela, who are the weakest side alongside Bolivia in this tournament. So then you wonder, I mean, Ecuador won, but Ecuador also played altitude, so maybe that was easier. Argentina won, which is quite rare to see Argentina. They've often struggled in La Paz. And then Colombia got the draw. I think that was in the last combo. It's a game Paraguay really need to win if we think of the Bolivia game at home, where they drop the points, because usually you beat Bolivia at home, and then you draw away, or often you lose away, but it doesn't matter. But thinking about this, the fact that Paraguay couldn't beat them at home, it kind of puts the pressure on this away game to take something from it, or really try and get a win. I thought Berizzo got it wrong in Ecuador, which was our last game at altitude in Quito, because he went very defensive, but then he wasn't able to switch at the moment that Ecuador switched. So Ecuador around 60 minutes said, okay, now we're gonna, put the speedy players on, and they're tired and they're going to be in trouble. And so against Bolivia, maybe he will change it up, not try and go so defensive, and because trying to play defensive and get a goal at the end at altitude when you're not the team accustomed to it is very difficult. So I think what he needs to look at is, how can we go out actually a bit more attacking, try and get the goal and then sit back, which is, I would say, is probably easier to just sit deep and try and defend a lead than be chasing at 0-0 when you come to 60 minutes. So I would expect quite an attacking team, and you can even play Asamudi and Charlie Gonzalez together. I think that can work fine, especially as I would guess they will use the long ball a lot, because you don't want to be pressing in midfield or running around. So it might be a time to try and hit some of those long balls. It's a shame Avalos is injured, because he would have been a perfect player, I think, for this game. Maybe it's something for Tacuara as well. I mean, I don't know at 38 if he will have the energy for this, but he's the kind of player that could do a really good job holding the ball up. And that might be why he's in there, because you don't see Tacuara is not going to play against Argentina, or I would be very surprised. That's not his game. But maybe he's in there for this Bolivia match in particular.
I think we can expect anything from Berizzo, Roberto. We haven't talked about Gaston Jimenez. This player has been probably on all his rosters, on all his teams. I mean, we haven't talked about him, but he has his players, he has his style, and a lot of people are questioning everything he's doing here, but he has his ways, Roberto.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's only so much you can go with until something goes wrong. And obviously he comes from that school of Bielsa, so he's a bit more stubborn and obviously true to his ideas. But when it comes to these type of matches where you need to get all the points necessary, obviously you got 9 points at stake here. You're gonna need at least half of those to at least think about considering and also expecting other results going your way, which is something that Paraguay really don't want, but they're in this situation at the moment. There is a lot of factors going in, aside from the public pressure that's obviously on Berizzo right now. This guy and this team in general cannot afford to drop any more points, because if that does happen, and with the World Cup coming so close, they're going to have to literally go on a miracle to try to get as many results into even just go in the playoffs. And, I think ultimately for this Paraguay squad, they're going to have to get the results necessary. Ralph brings up a good point about being the situation that they drop points against Bolivia at home, so they're going to go for the win, which they haven't done, I think, almost 50 years or something. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So now we're going into obviously my favorite segment of the night is predictions. And
you first.
You know what? By all means, sure, I'll go first. So I think we're going to see 3 different games, 3 different setups, obviously 3 different environments for Paraguay. The first game against Argentina, I think we see a Paraguay squad that is, very hungry to get the result that they need. I think they understand that they have to get the win at home. They cannot drop points, even if it is the Copa America champions like Argentina. Having said that, I think because of the adversary that we have in front of us, I don't know if they will have enough in the tank to really secure the win. They're going to have to play the perfect match in order to get the result here. Similar to what Argentina did against Brazil, actually, when you think about it. I do think they will drop points in this one. I see a 1-1 draw against Argentina in the Defensores del Chaco. Heading into Chile, I think, this is one of the weakest Chile sides in quite some time. I think Paraguay has demonstrated that in the past, that they have what it takes to beat Chile. One of those games where they kind of feel like the home team when they go to Santiago. So I expect them to get the 3 points there. So I expect, I'll say a 2-1 win against Chile over there in Santiago. Against Bolivia, this is the tough one because, yes, the adversary, as you said, Fede, is the weakest in South America, with Venezuela, obviously. But the factor of the altitude, this is something that they're going to use to their strengths. But I think if Paraguay can really set up properly in this one, I think they have what it takes to get a result that is not going to be pretty. It's not going to be convincing, but it's ultimately the one that they need. I see one of those type of games against Bolivia that it's going to be very tight, that if they get 1 goal, it's going to be that, and they're going to shut down and try to track back as much as they can. So I see a win for Paraguay, the first one in almost 50 years in Bolivia, in La Paz. So Paraguay will come out of these 3 games with 7 points to their name, which I think, looking at the table real quick, if you add in all of those factors, that puts them at 18 points with 6 more games to play. I think that's a perfect position to be in, seeing what happens to the other squads as well. I think Paraguay would still be in prime position to qualify for the World Cup if they get those results. And since you decided to come at me first, Fede, you're next.
Okay. I'll go next. Well, first of all, against Argentina, I mean, this is the toughest rival right now in South American football. So, yeah, I do think we're going to make it rocky for them. I think it could actually even be a spicy match just because of how it's been lately against them. Yeah, the Romero twins, they like to go at these games. Almiron also likes to take it up front. These guys kind of like to outshine on these games. So I do think they're going to have a good game, but I just see a very good team in front of us. This Argentinian team right now looks just way too strong to beat. So I do think they're going to take away the 3 points, and then we're going to have to go get it back in Chile. And that's where I think we're going to do everything correctly, and we're going to win that game. This team has showed before that they can do it, just like you said, Roberto. So I'm expecting us to win that game, and then maybe get a draw in Bolivia, maybe get a draw in the altitude, and we're gonna have to again with 4 points, just like we did last time around. Just try to keep on going with these kind of points. I mean, I'm not gonna expecting much more than that, just because of the 3 opponents and where we have to play also. So yeah, I'm gonna go with 4 points on these 3 games.
Wow. So Roberto has 7, Fede has 4. I can see us being unbeaten. I can see us going through unbeaten. I feel that the game that where we could struggle most is actually Bolivia rather than Argentina. I'm quietly confident we can pick up a point against Argentina. They're in a position where they don't need to win the game. They're pretty much qualified already. They have the 2 home games afterwards. People are coming back after they're quite tired arriving here. A lot of their players lost at the weekend. A lot of big teams lost at the weekend after Europe. I don't know if I think we're facing them at the best time. I prefer playing them now than say in the middle game or the final game. So I think we can get the draw against Argentina. I agree with both of you that Chile is the game we have to win, and I think it's a game we can win. It's as we were just talking, it kind of suits Paraguay's style that they're going to have to play to beat us, and we'll have that space in behind. I was just looking quickly. We seem to have got the better of them the last 3 or 4 games. So I can see us winning that, even 2-0 or 3-0, like we did in the last World Cup qualifier. I can really see Paraguay doing a good job in Chile. So that puts us on 4 points. And then the Bolivia game is, I can see it being, I don't know, it's going to be 1-0, but I can't tell you which way it's going to go, because it could be that we lose to a late goal after we're trying to hold on, or we could get that early goal and win. So, I don't know where to put myself. I'm going to put myself on the positive side. Let's go positive, and that we manage to score early in La Paz, we hold on, and we get 7 points, and Roberto and I are buying our tickets to Qatar.
Not so soon, man. Not so soon. But yeah, I think these are games that I think Paraguay can get results in all 3. It's going to be tough. It's probably one of the toughest 3 games that they can have at the moment. But ultimately, you would have to feel optimistic in saying that they can get results here. I think the first game against Argentina is the one that will ultimately paint a picture of the side moving forward. And whatever comes out of this one, I think will allow them to really go into the game against Chile and then against Bolivia with a better attitude if needed. So I'm excited about this. As always, it's great to be back in the World Cup qualifying mode, and hopefully that for these 3 games that we get the results that we need, and we can go for Qatar and qualification for the World Cup in a much more easier path. So as always, guys, another great show. As always, you can listen to not just this podcast episode, but also our previews that we did with Santiago Lauza featuring Argentina. We'll be also having preview episodes for the games against Bolivia and Chile. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, I think this is the perfect way to put a bow on this show. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, for Fede Pere, and for Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening. See you soon.